And we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Soul Survivor podcast. We got a little special edition Sunday podcast here as me and Ryan are back and we are previewing the season 42 finale. What's up, Ryan? Excited to be here.
Dylan, happy finale week to you. I am very excited. We are only a few days away from crowning the winner of Survivor 42 and adding somebody to the winner circle. I think it's been a great season so far. We'll go over more of our thoughts on the season in the finale recap, and I'm excited to do some predictions and previewing with you.
Yeah, so am I. Look, it's definitely been a great season. Excited for that. So, excited to get my thoughts in. We did this for the season 41 finale, and it was great. So happy to be back. Taking any questions as normal. We'll probably go through and just run through different scenarios that could happen in the finale. We'll probably make this a short 30 to 40 minute podcast. So we'll excited to go through different scenarios. Now, if you're watching this, be sure to hit the like button. Be sure to subscribe to this channel if you haven't already. Follow us Instagram, Twitter at Soul Survivor Pod. Also, you can follow us on TikTok. Links in the description below. But yeah, TikTok is a thing that I've been doing also for this podcast, and TikTok's going well. Again, follow us there at Soul Survivor Podcast on TikTok. We did a Omer TikTok that's doing really well, so love to see that. So, like normal, do that stuff, and let's get right to it.
All right. I mean, Dylan, all I'll say is kudos to you for the TikTok, which is going very well. That's your space. And I just wanted to quickly mention it because, we didn't cover a big part of why Omer left in our recap because the show didn't display a lot of it. So I'm very glad that we were able to put together some more pieces. It makes a bit more sense now. Both, what happened with Omer, what happened with Lindsay and Omer, all of it. So I'm very glad we were able to fill in the puzzle more, which is good now.
Yeah, and that's what the TikTok was about. You could find it on YouTube. It's on the video's on our YouTube channel also. But basically, Omer had an idol nullifier that we never saw, and it's pretty crazy because that was one of the reasons why everyone was seeing him as a big threat. Word kind of got out that he had the idol nullifier, and it was a huge part of apparently why he went home. I mean, he basically called it the reason why he went home. He said he was way too focused on that. And that is, and I mean, again, I'm pretty surprised that the show didn't show it. I think that they heard the feedback from last season when everyone was, too focused on it. Everyone said that the season was too focused on advantages. And I think Survivor was like, well, let's try to take an advantage that doesn't play a role and let's just not show it. And that's a way that will cut out advantages. I'm just not sure if that was the right way to do it. They could have not focused on it, but at the same time had it there. And this way we would have understood more why Omer went home. So I just think it was an interesting choice by Survivor. And it's certainly interesting to hear about his idol nullifier.
Yeah, the one thing I'll add before we get into the finale preview, I saw this mentioned on Twitter and I wish I could give them credit. I just don't remember who said it, but Drea sat out of that challenge earlier in the merge and she found the knowledge is power. In season 41, knowledge is power was found by Liana before the merge. Do you remember how Xander sat out of that challenge and he didn't find the advantage under the bench? Right. Do we think that was the nullifier that was never found in 41?
Maybe that's an interesting point you bring up because we never really found out what that was, and I don't think we ever will. But there's a decent chance that assuming everything lines up between both seasons, then that could have been the idol nullifier.
Yep.
All right, but let's get to it. I guess the way we'll do this is we could talk about who we think is going to place where. I think that's how we'll start off, and then we'll start getting into scenarios. I think that the way this is going to go, if I had to just give it to you right now, the way that I'm seeing this is I think that, we know that Marianne and Mike have idols. We know that they have to play it at Final 5. We know that they're going to play it at Final 5. We know that both of them have not won an individual immunity challenge yet, and I'm not sure either one has been close, so I don't anticipate that happening. Then we have Romeo, who has not come close. So I'm assuming that, like every other challenge, it's going to come down to Lindsay and Jonathan in this immunity challenge. Now, this Final 5 immunity challenge is for those that did not see this finale preview. It looks to be the same one as South Pacific and Cambodia, which is like you have 6 different stations. You have to go to each one, and then there's a huge, really tough puzzle at the end. I believe Sophie won it in South Pacific, and Kelly Wentworth, I believe, won it in Cambodia. So if the seasons completely are aligned and this season is the same as season 41, then somebody is going to get an advantage in this challenge, or quote unquote a head start. And this is an easy challenge to do it for, given that you have to go to like 5 or 6 stations. I assume that they would just get one of those stations or 2 of those stations chopped off. And then there's likely going to be a very tough puzzle at the end that who knows if it even makes a difference or not. So it should even the playing field if Mike or Marianne or Romeo were to win that, were to find that advantage for the advantage of the challenge. However, I'm just going to not even think about that right now. And I'm just going to say there's no way to predict that. Who knows? The last season, it was a word on Scramble and Erica did it first and she ended up getting it. This season, who knows who will find it. So I'm just going to say that Lindsay or Jonathan will probably win this challenge, given the fact that they have been against each other in seemingly every single individual immunity challenge so far. So I think that at least to start off the episode, you would have to think that whoever loses that challenge between Lindsay or Jonathan will probably be the one going home to start.
So that was, so yeah, we said that on the recap on Wednesday. We had the same exact thought process where one of them will win because that's just been what's happening the whole season, and then the other would go home. I do agree with Adrianne's point in the chat where now that we know that it's that challenge where it's a physical obstacle course and puzzle components, I almost feel like Lindsay and Jonathan are still the most likely to win based on the physical piece, but they haven't been the best at puzzles this season. I mean, Omar was great at the puzzles, but Omar's now gone. And to my knowledge, Marianne's been somebody who has usually been like in second or third with the puzzle. She was a big part of the puzzles in the pre-merge whenever that came up. And then this recent challenge where Omar won reward with the 3D vertical puzzle, she was right behind him in second. So I definitely agree. Getting to the puzzle, getting through the 5 stations, I definitely think Lindsay and Jonathan are going to breeze through it. But I would not be surprised if Marianne pulls out a win on the puzzle here, because we haven't seen that many puzzles in the pre-merge. And that's where an interesting wrinkle comes in, where if she is safe, then she could then give her idol to somebody else, maybe somebody who she wants to sit next to, possibly.
I think that's a very interesting point that let me just get Adrienne in the chat, and you bring up, like, not only the advantage could even the playing field, but usually that's a pretty tough puzzle at the end. I believe in both South Pacific and Cambodia, it was like the gears that you have to get in place, and then you spin it.
It's a bit different this season. So based on the press photos, I mean, like you said in the past, it was where you had to put 8 different pieces in a rotating puzzle where it's very hard because there's a lot of different combinations to the rotating, and then you have to slot it in. So it's very hard until you get the first one, then it gets a bit easier. With this one from the press photos, it almost looks like they're building like a circle in a way, but it's kind of like that fire puzzle Cochrane once built in Caramoan, where it's like a vertical puzzle, but like you bring it out this way. That's kind of what it's going to be, I think.
Okay. That's definitely not an easy puzzle. It's an easier one. I'm still going to say that that's a huge disadvantage to Jonathan. Everybody else, I think, is capable of doing it. I'm not saying Jonathan's not capable. If he has some huge head start in the stations, then he could do it. But I'm going to, that's tough now, because I would think it would be Lindsay or, regardless, I think it's going to be Lindsay or Jonathan. Now, obviously, if Lindsay wins, then I'm going to definitely say it's going to be Jonathan. If Lindsay and Jonathan both don't win, then I still think it's going to be probably Lindsay.
I agree.
So I'm going to say Lindsay absolutely needs to win this challenge. So given the likelihood of whether she'll win or not win, I'm just going to say that assuming she doesn't pull off the immunity challenge, I think she's going to go at Final 5.
So to make a comparison, and I'm not trying to compare Lindsay and Ricard as game players. I think they had some similarities, but obviously they had some differences, of course. I'm making the comparison because you and I, when we did our power rankings in last season's finale preview, we said who's our 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we both had Ricard pretty high, but we both had the stipulation that if he gets there, he'll win, but we don't know if he'll get there. And we both said if he loses that first challenge at the Final 5, he's going to go. They may throw us like a little wrinkle, like, oh, maybe Deshaun will go or whatever, but Ricard was gone. So I'm wondering if this is in the same boat where it's like, oh, maybe they'll tease a Jonathan going home or like a Romeo. He's an easy out. But I do agree. I think if Lindsay doesn't win this, I do think she goes, unless Marianne or Mike make a huge move and play an idol on her, but I don't see it happening.
Yeah, because you would think that they're gonna play the idol on themselves no matter what. You don't want to risk, even if they're sure that the votes are not coming for them. You don't want to risk some kind of tie because there's two idols there. You don't want to risk a tie and a revote, or I should say, yeah, I don't know. Who knows how a tie would happen? Then a stray vote would have to go on someone else and have to be like a 2-2-1 for it to be a tie. But you don't want to risk anything. I assume Mike and Marianne will 100% be safe unless something insane happens. So yeah, my pick is Lindsay going out at Final 5. And if Lindsay were to go out at Final 5, then you would have Jonathan, Romeo, Mike, and Marianne left for the Final 4 challenge. Now, the Final 4 challenge we know is normally some kind of balance type of thing, or like, you know, it's not going to be some crazy. They used to do like if you think back to like very early on, not even very early on, even like 10 seasons ago or 12 seasons ago. They used to have the final challenge be some kind of huge maze where it's like very much a lot of endurance. They used to have, I always remember back to, and I don't know why this is the first one that comes to mind, but the final immunity challenge for, I'll never forget like Boston Rob and in his season that he dominated, where they had the challenge. Basically, it seemed like he was the only one that could win, even though Ashley was close to him, like where you run up, down steps a zillion times. Like that's what I think of when I think of final immunity challenge. But for the last 10 or 12 seasons, it has not been like that. So I'm assuming it's going to be a balance type challenge. Or again, we have the thing where you're tied around your back and the balls are coming down in a zillion directions. We haven't seen that challenge of the season. So it could be that. To me, at a challenge like that, that's anybody's game.
Right. I mean, yeah. I mean, I feel like on any given day, somebody can win the Samotion challenge with the balls and the ramps, or anybody can win stacking some letters and whatnot. So I don't think we can make an accurate pick there. The thing that we could try to figure out, though, is based on who wins that final challenge, making the assumption Lindsay's gone, because that's what we both of us are predicting, who would take who. Because I think it gets interesting where you obviously choose who you want to sit next to, where, okay, if I see them as a GOAT, I want to bring them to the end with me and make the two other strongest people go to fire. But there's also some other elements too. And obviously people might overthink it. People might have their own, priorities. But Steven has said on the podcast as well, like if you don't want to give somebody a hero moment, maybe bring them to the end so you don't get that, because usually the fire maker looks great in the eyes of the jury. So let's just say, for example, Mike won final immunity. He's close to Jonathan anyway, so he may want to bring Jonathan just as part of their alliance. But, even if Mike was starting to think of scenarios and saying, well, Jonathan could be a big threat at the end, he could win, he may want to say, I could bring Jonathan with me so he doesn't get that hero moment in fire, and make Romeo and Marianne fight it out. But it'd be interesting to know if each person won, who might they take with them?
Yeah, you make an interesting point. I think, and we mentioned this last time, you mentioned the possibility that Marianne is going to have a huge opportunity at Final 5 to once again make a big move. She could pick who goes home because she's going to have an idol. No one knows she has it. She could play the idol of votes are coming on her. Every vote could come onto her, and then she could say, okay, I'm not going home tonight. You're going home. And she could literally pick who goes home. If she does that successfully, she is far and away the best threat, and I think that the biggest threat, I should say, and everybody on that island is going to realize it based on the next two votes. So, and I think that there's a pretty high probability that she has a big move at Final 5. Regardless, she's playing an idol, and it's going to look good. So I would be very surprised to see somebody not named Romeo. Anybody not named Romeo will not be bringing Marianne. I think anybody not named Romeo is putting Marianne into fire. Romeo, I could see him bring Marianne, but I could also see him also just saying she's the biggest threat. No, she'd go to fire. I don't foresee Romeo winning a single challenge, so I don't think that's something that we really need to think about too much. Watch. Now he'll end up winning the final immunity challenge. Now that I said that, but yeah, I think Marianne's gonna be in fire, almost guaranteed.
I think if I had to make my predictions right now, which is why we're here, if Romeo wins, which again we think is unlikely given his track record, I think he brings Marianne. He has been out of the vote every single vote in the merge so far, except last week when Omar went home. And I feel like he and Marianne bonded over them being quote unquote on the outs. So I have a feeling he would want to bring her. I think they kind of have, that they obviously found a friendship in each other. So I think that he would bring her, and he would send the two big guys to fire. That's my prediction for Romeo. For Mike, it's funny because the clear choice is I think he's going to bring, Jonathan, but I could see a scenario where, just like last season, Xander made the wrong choice in bringing Erica with him. I could see a scenario where Mike says, like, look, Jonathan, we worked together until Final Four, but he's a big threat. And I think Marianne, I can beat her at the end. And he would be wrong, I think, to bring her to the end. So I could see that happening. If Jonathan wins, I think Jonathan just brings Mike. I think it's as straightforward as that. And if Marianne wins, I also feel like she might take Romeo. So those are my predictions.
Yeah, the thing with Mike is that, unfortunately, we've seen in the history of Survivor is that when you have a guy who's a little bit older and playing with younger players, they tend to underestimate the younger players. Mm-hmm. So I could see Mike possibly misreading that. And we've kind of seen his edit get a little bit more towards like he was like the person who was, so humble and connecting everyone with everyone. And he still has played a phenomenal social game, but we've kind of seen him become a little bit more, I don't even want to use a cocky, but confident. The last few votes is that I think he really thinks that he's going to win if he gets to the end. So I could see him misreading Jonathan as a bigger threat and bringing Marianne, and that would be a huge mistake. Yeah. And I think that if everyone sees Mike bring Marianne and not even put her to fire, I think that's immediately like Xander last season.
Exactly, it's exactly what happened last season. Yeah,
like Xander last season, Xander may have lost. He may have lost the season on bringing Erica. We don't know what would have happened if Erica would have got through fire. If who would have happened, what would have happened, who knows? But he lost points in the eyes of the jury by even bringing Erica. I think Mike would lose a lot of points with the jury by bringing Marianne. So I'm hoping that if Mike is in that position, he wisens up and says, all right, I realize Marianne's had 2 huge moves. I'm going to put Jonathan to fire. I'm going to bring Jonathan and put Marianne to fire, or bring Romeo and put Jonathan against Marianne, or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm hoping he does that, but I feel like he could be getting the edit of somebody who makes the wrong decision.
I think that makes sense. And then in terms of like final 3, I feel like if we were to map out different scenarios, I feel like I think you and I can agree the most likely winner of the season is one of Marianne, Mike, and Lindsay. I think both of us are in agreement that Romeo is most likely in a GOAT position, where a lot of people don't want to vote for him. And I do feel bad because I think Romeo did well in the pre-merge, but as we've seen in the post-merge edit, and as we've seen from exit interviews, a lot of people called him paranoid. A lot of people felt like it wasn't like, we ignored him and stuff. Like, he became paranoid, and then we kind of started to ignore him. And I think that he just lost that respect. And then Jonathan, and I'll start off by giving Jonathan some quick credit, where we didn't discuss this last week on the recap, but a big reason why Omer went home, in addition to the nullifier, is that Omer and Jonathan found it together, and Jonathan caught Omer in a lie because he asked Omer and Lindsay separately if Lindsay knew about the advantage. Omer said she didn't. Lindsay said she did. And he cross-referenced and he caught them in a lie, which really hurt them, because then he went and told Mike. Mike told Marianne, and they all began to distrust Omer and Lindsay. So I will give Jonathan some credits. The problem is, I think at this point it's too little too late. I just don't think the jury, with like your Chanels, your Highs, your Torys, your Dreas, I don't think they respect Jonathan enough. And I don't think they like him well enough. So I don't think he can win. So if you're one of Mike, Marianne, or Lindsay, you want to sit next to Jonathan and Romeo. If it's, Marianne and Lindsay together, or if it's Mike and Marianne or Mike and Lindsay, we can discuss what would happen then. But if you're one of those 3, your optimal position is to sit next to those 2 others.
My one hope for Mike, in terms of knowing to bring Jonathan, is the fact that he had the opportunity to get Jonathan out last week, and he didn't go along with Marianne's plan, but like he kind of did. He knew he was in on it. He knew it was going to happen. So I think, given the fact that I think maybe at this point he thinks that he could take Jonathan. So I'm curious to see what happens with that. So based on what my prediction was, Final 4, I will say that, I'm interested to see who, and we didn't really talk about this, I'm interested to see who Jonathan would pick if he ends up winning the challenge. Jonathan also has gotten the edit of somebody who has kind of discounted Marianne and not really taken her too seriously. I could see him sending Mike to fire. The only thing is with Romeo there, it makes it so much like you have to send Marianne over Romeo, obviously. So
See,
that
but Dylan, we said that last season. Like, why would you not just take Heather? And Xander, he could have taken Heather easily, and he said, "No, I'm going to take Erica." So we don't know.
right. You really don't know the perceptions of people on there. Now, if I had to make a prediction right now, I would say that the final three is going to be Marianne, Marianne, Jonathan, and Romeo, or Marianne, Mike, and Romeo, because I think that I don't know. The thing is, like, I feel like Marianne has just like she has the story. She has the story. It's just the question is she going to be able to win fire? That's really it. Like, that's her biggest hurdle to winning the game. So, am I going to predict somebody to lose fire at this point that I think could win the game? Because at the end of the day, I mean, it's fire. You don't really know, is Mike better than Marianne at fire? Is Marianne better than Mike at fire? Is Marianne better than Jonathan at fire? Like, we don't really know. You know what I mean? So, like, it's hard for me to sit here and be like, I think Marianne's going to lose in fire. My answer would be, I think we could get, if Jonathan wins the final immunity challenge, I think we're going to see Marianne versus Mike in fire, and the winner of that wins the game. If Mike wins the final immunity challenge, I think we're going to get probably Jonathan and Marianne in fire. And if Marianne wins against Jonathan, she could win the game. I think Marianne would beat anybody if she gets to the end. I think she would beat Mike, even though it may be a close vote. I think she would beat Mike, especially given her move at the final 6 and probably at the final 5. So I think her only way to lose in the game is to lose fire, which is why I think she's going to win. It's just like, to me, any scenario that she does get there, and again, the odds are she does get there, given the fact that 3 people get there and there's only 5 left, I'm going to pick her to win. I just don't know if she's going to beat Mike and Romeo or Jonathan Romeo. That's what I have to say right now.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like that makes sense in terms of her getting there and also her winning. I mean, even though she got credit from Omar publicly that she made this move against him, I mean, it wasn't very vocal. He kind of whispered to her, like, "Hey, did you do it?" And she's like, "Yeah, I did it." But I don't know if this is going to, just like with Omar, I don't know if this is going to skyrocket her threat level like it happened to him. Because again, there was a lot more that we didn't see. So I feel like Marianne is likely to get there, unless she uses her idol at Final 5. Now everyone's like, okay, whoa, you got rid of Omar and you had an idol. Now she's going to be put to fire in Final 4. Maybe that could happen. Now, would she win fire? The problem is we haven't really seen anybody make it this season other than Jonathan's been providing. So I feel like even though I could see a scenario where, like you said, Jonathan doesn't get to the end, between the Final 4 immunity challenge, which he could win, and then he could win in fire, I think his odds are better to get there and be a losing finalist than it's not to get there.
Jonathan, you're saying?
I think Jonathan has better odds of getting to the end as a losing finalist than going out before the final 3, I feel like.
I agree with that, I think. Because I think if he gets to the final 4, I think most people are fine taking him, and I also like his odds in any challenge. So
yeah, I think he's in that Xander role where I just feel like people like Xander, you could have taken a shot at Xander a couple of times and no one did, even though they knew he had an idol because they just weren't afraid of him. And at this point, you and I said in the preseason, we said it in the pre-merge, like Jonathan's going to be an early merge target because he's going to win all the challenges. We didn't factor in that, Lindsay and him would be going like back and forth, but they've had like at this point 3 or 4 opportunities to take him out, and they haven't taken any of them, which tells me they're not threatened by him really at all. Like, because when you look at like his archetype of like, oh, your Brad Culpeppers, your Joes, your Ozzies, like those guys either get targeted in the early merge and they lose because they're vulnerable, or like in Brad's case, even though he didn't win, you can't target them from Final 7 on because they just keep winning. And the fact that he's been available and they haven't taken the shots just tells me they're fine sitting next to him potentially.
Yeah, my prediction right now, if you put a gun to my head and said pick the final 5 in order right now, I would say Marianne wins. I would say Jonathan gets second place with like 1 vote or 2.
Roxroy's voting for
yeah. I'd say Jonathan gets 1 vote or 2, and I would say Romeo is the GOAT finalist, and then I would say Mike loses in fire, probably to Marianne, I would think, or technically he could also lose to Jonathan. Regardless, I think Marianne gets there, and then I would say Lindsay comes in 5th. So that would be my if you put a gun to my head and said you have to predict it, then that would be what I would say.
I would agree with that. I mean, I would love to give a opposite take just so we can kind of see who's right, but I think the logic makes sense there. The one thing I'll say with Mike is, are we not putting enough stock in Mike's background as a retired firefighter? Like, Mike understands fire. I know that it's a very like blanket statement, but like Mike understands, fire needs oxygen, fire needs fuel, like what it takes. Now, granted, we've seen in the past, great fire makers can always lose. Sometimes it matters which station you're at, because the one that's over here versus over there has like more wind going to it. So like, and anything can happen with your sticks breakdown. But I feel like Mike I think Mike is posed to do well in that as well, just like Jonathan. So if it was Mike versus Jonathan in fire making, let's just say Marianne wins and takes Omer, for example, I wouldn't know who I would bet on between Mike and Jonathan. Whereas I feel like if it's Mike versus Marianne or Mike versus Romeo, I feel like I would give the edge to Mike.
Yeah, I think Mike should have the edge over most people in fire, especially Marianne. For me, it's like, it's hard to see Marianne losing in fire. If she does lose in fire, if Marianne loses in fire to Mike, bravo, she played a great game and Mike's gonna win. That's what it is. So if I had to like pick who has the second best chance of winning, I would say Mike, because he's guaranteed to go to the final four. And if he can make fire successfully and sit next to anybody not named Marianne, then I think Mike's gonna end up winning the season. He needs to make sure Marianne's there. However, given just the odds and the different scenarios that we've played out, when I say that is my prediction, I'm just saying that based on all the scenarios that could happen, I think that like the way this finishes is the most likely. I'm not sure if different people are going to go to fire, but I'm going to end up being correct. Like, that's what I mean. It doesn't necessarily mean that like we're predicting the exact correct to go to fire. Like, the placement that I said is like what I think is going to happen based on all the scenarios. But like, would I be surprised if Mike wins a fire making challenge and then ends up in the finale in the final three instead of Marianne or Jonathan? Like, no, I would not be surprised. Yeah. Again, I think if Mike sits next to Marianne, he's going to lose. The reason why I'm putting Marianne as my winner is because I just think she beats anyone there. Now, if she doesn't get there, then I think Mike has the best chance. And we could even go back to Lindsay. If she figures out a way to win final five, then I think that, she can win final four because she gets hot, and then you never know. If Lindsay goes, I think the most close vote we could get, in my opinion, is if Lindsay sits next to Marianne or Lindsay sits next to Jonathan, because people seem to love Lindsay. We saw like Drea leave and be like, I'm rooting for you, Lindsay. She seems to have not ruffled any feathers the entire season. So I think that if Lindsay finds a way to get there, it'll end up being a close vote no matter what. I just think that basically the only path for Lindsay to get there is either win both immunity challenges, or win an immunity challenge and win fire. That's her path to the final three. That's the only way she could go.
Yeah, well, that's why I was making the Ricard comparison again, because I feel like at this point she's in a position where if she doesn't win those, she goes out. But you're right, we can't discount her, because if she gets to the end, I do think she has a good shot to win, even against Marianne, just because I think Omer going to Ponderosa would tell the jury how they've been making moves together. They've been in lockstep. She was responsible for a lot of people going out. Granted, her being blindsided by the Omer vote doesn't look great for her, but I feel like she would still get some respect from the jury. But I feel like, and again, I don't want to take like too much from the exit interviews, because obviously we don't want to like take them as canon, or we don't want to take them as spoilers. But that's why I feel like Romeo and Jonathan can't win, just because I don't think they have the respect of the jury. I feel like with Lindsay and Marianne, I do think they will have the jury's respect. With Mike, and we mentioned this in our recap on Wednesday, it's going to come down to him owning his game, because I do agree with you that if he sits next to Marianne, he'll lose. But against anybody else, you would think he's the likely winner if Marianne's not there. But if he starts saying, I came in, I tried to play an honorable and loyal game, I only like broke my word when someone else broke their word to me, then you're going to have like Chanel, Omer, Drea. You're going to have people say like, whoa, Mike, wait. You can't play that game with us, say that you were loyal, and then not be true to that. Own your game. If you lied to us and you turned on us because it benefited you, say that, but don't say like you played this game. Or if Mike tries to say, well, no, I only turned on you guys because you turned on me. Chanel's going to say, we voted for each other together and you were mad at me for no reason. Hai is going to say, you bought into Omer's lie. Like, so I'm just saying, I feel like Mike is in a good spot if Maryanne's not there, but he really needs to choose his words carefully at Final Tribal.
Yeah. I don't want to completely count out Mike.
No, of course not.
In any scenario. Even, again, I think Maryanne would beat him, but even if Maryanne is there, I don't want to completely count out Mike. Now, yes, do I think Maryanne will win if she was sitting next to Mike? Yes. Do I want to count out Mike? Absolutely not. We've seen crazy things happen. I also think Mike, if you had to like pick a player who has the most to gain or most to lose based on a jury speech, it's going to be Mike. If Mike gives a great speech, like, I came into this game and honesty was the most important thing to me in my entire life. So I came into this game and I thought that I would just, be able to follow everything that I thought in my real life and, be honest and be myself. And then I realized that as I went on that I couldn't be honest. I had to break some promises. It killed me to do that, but like, it's what I had to do. Yeah. And, the connections I made were authentic, and that was how I got to the end. If he like owns that, then he could win in any scenario.
Exactly. That's the point. He has to just own it.
If he goes in there and pulls a coach, then he has no chance. Unless he's sitting next to
that's my point.
Unless he's sitting next to Jonathan and Romeo. I can see a scenario like if Mike gets there with Jonathan and Romeo,
he will still win. He will win. Could flub his whole speech and he'll still win.
He will win. I could see him being like one of those winners who like gets destroyed in the jury speech and then still wins because he's sitting next to Jonathan and Romeo. So again, so many different scenarios. There's so many different things that could happen. But yeah, I mean, we've pretty much went through anything. Is there anything we've left out in terms of scenarios? Like, I know we haven't really spoke about Lindsay getting there just because she has the toughest path. But like, I mean, it would definitely be tough for Lindsay to win. She'd have to do something incredible. Like, it's just because if Lindsay's sitting next to Mike, that's probably an uphill battle for her. If she's sitting next to Maryanne, definitely an uphill battle for her. But at the same time, she could be like, I had my back against the wall and I won out, and that's like that was my only path, and I did it. And people like her, so you never know. I personally like if you had to hand-pick a final three, I mean, the like best case scenario in terms of like a viewer perspective, final three is Maryanne, Maryanne, Mike, and Lindsay. I think that's virtually impossible.
I think so too. Yeah. And again, we keep saying that Lindsay, if she gets there, she could probably win, but we think it's gonna be hard for her to get there. I mean, she could be in a scenario where, Kelly Wentworth was a big target heading into Final Five. She won Final Five immunity, and then she lost the immunity challenge. And we knew as soon as her ball dropped, she was gone. Nothing else was going to save her. And now with the fire-making twist, even though I still don't like the fire-making twist, Lindsay's still in a spot where she can win Final Five if she gets the advantage or she does well at the puzzle. And then, she loses Final Four, but she gets put to fire and she makes it out of there and she survives. So, again, you really never know what's going to happen. I mean, I think the thing that we both can agree on, again, is one of those three will be our winner. It just depends on who they sit next to and how they give their speech. And you're right. I think if Mike is next to Jonathan and Romeo, I think he wins regardless. But if he's there with one of Lindsay and Maryanne and doesn't do a good speech, he's not going to win. So
yeah, his speech is the most important because I think you kind of know what Maryanne's going to say no matter what. Like, she's going to talk about, being herself and how, she's like, she's somebody who, maybe didn't have a lot of confidence in herself, somebody who, didn't think she could do this. And then somebody who kind of grew as the game went on and had these two huge moves at the end. And she knew that was the perfect time to strike. Like, what her speech is probably going to be. Lindsay's speech, you kind of know what it's going to be. Mike is where it's, again, biggest, most to gain, most to lose, could go either way.
I just can't, before we get to questions and comments in a second, I just can't believe we're in the spot where, again, if you had told me heading into the merge that our winner would be one of Mike, Maryanne, or Lindsay, I would have said you were crazy because Mike at the time would have been, that makes sense. Mike's getting a good edit, but Lindsay and Maryanne were virtually quiet in the edits, and we still had power players like Hai, Omer, Drea. We had a couple big players on the board left, and I think up until last week we were like, okay, either once we saw that Hai's edit was starting to go down, we're like, okay, it's going to be probably Drea, Hai, or Mike. Okay, well now Drea's gone. Omer's the most likely winner, but okay, well Mike's there too, and Lindsay's getting on the rise. Now, this is why I think the season has been so good in the second half as well, because it's really shaken up, and now we don't know what's going to happen.
Right, and here's the thing: I don't want to. While I think that Maryanne if I had to pick again, if I had to pick, I think Marianne wins. But at the same time, it's something that I talking to my brother about. Like, I don't want to completely count on the edit by any means,
Of course.
because at the end of the day, what were they going to do? Not show Marianne making the biggest move of the season? Like, they had to show that. They had to put a lot of focus on her. Like, they didn't really have a choice in the edit there. It's like in season 12 in Panama, Cirie has like the biggest move in Final Six, and then she doesn't end up winning the season because she loses in a fire making challenge. So like, it's just like she could just be getting the edit of a great player, fallen angel, and you don't know, especially in Survivor 42 where they're trying to mess with you. So who knows what's going to happen? And I'm ready to get to questions if you are.
Yeah, I'm ready. I think if last season taught us anything, we can't really read the edit. We have to just kind of see who's making the moves and who's kind of positioned well to go forward. So,
yep. All right, let's get to questions.
Okay, so let's see here. Let's see. So the first question I see is from Adrienne. So how crazy would it be if Mike were to use his idol on Marianne and Marianne uses hers on Romeo? That would be insane. So this is interesting because, the most likely scenario that we saw was, okay, not that we saw, sorry. The most likely scenario that we've talked about is, okay, Final 5, Mike and Marianne are just going to play it on themselves. They're probably not going to win immunity. They played it on themselves to get the Final 4. Now, if one of them win, who do they play it on? I think that would be a really interesting question. The thing about Mike and Marianne, and he could have just been saying things to her to gain her trust, but he did say to her face, if you think you needed a Final 5, I will use it on you if Mike feels like he's not going home. Now, I think Mike, from what he was saying to us in confessional, he's going to want to secure his own safety. That's what I really think. But that would be an insane scenario where it's like, LJ plays it on Tony, Tony plays it on LJ, like the whole thing where if Mike uses it on Marianne and the whole time she's like, okay, well, I was going to use mine on Romeo, like that would be an interesting scenario. I still think most likely they use it on themselves unless one of them wins immunity, but we'll see.
Most likely scenarios that they use it on themselves. I can't really see Mike, an old school guy, doing that. You know what I mean? Like, he's an old school guy. You think he's going to give up a chance at Final 4 fire making, at least, to do that? I doubt it. That being said, if Marianne could somehow pull that off and somehow simultaneously vote Mike out at Final 5, then bravo. That's what I have to say to that.
See, and this is what I was saying, where, and you were mentioning what Tyler said as well, where it's like, you can't discount certain things, and it's like they have to show these big moves, and this is why you can't really count anybody out, because I think a lot of us respect Natalie Anderson as a winner in San Juan del Sur. And the reason for that was she was positioned well in the pre-merge, and then when she lost Jeremy, we were all like, her stock is down, she's not going to win. And what does she do, like, in a row, basically, to win San Juan del Sur? She pretends that she votes the wrong way and gets Alec out. She then, kind of like mists and blindsides John at the Final 6, and then Final 5, she could use it on herself, but she uses the idol to take Baylor out. And then at Final 4, she's so well positioned that she doesn't get voted out there. So it's not impossible that Marianne is on the same trajectory where she's quiet until Final 7. She's starting to come out of her shell, really make some late game moves. And I mean, this is something as well that former players like Steven talk about. I mean, they mentioned this with Rick Devens. Like, the jury wants to see a show. The jury wants to be entertained. And if you're making these public moves or you're really shocking them in the moment, that's going to get you a lot of points. And if Marianne just took out Omer, she manages to save somebody else with an idol like a Romeo, and she makes a really flashy move or gets Mike out, she's going to really elevate her stock at the end there.
Yep. All right.
So the next one I see is from Green Bay Packer fan. Who are the best fire players left? So Jonathan's probably the best. After that, Mike and Lindsay. So this is what we were saying earlier in the podcast, where we don't really know who's the best at fire because it hasn't been part of the edit. We would assume Jonathan's the best because he does a lot of providing for the tribe, and Mike, as a retired firefighter, could do well, but we don't have a lot of information.
Yeah, I would go with those two, and I would say that other than that, we have no info. So I don't know.
Next question. Oh, Dylan, this is a really big point we didn't mention yet, but from the preview, we see Romeo holds up a fake idol, and it's crazy that Romeo, of all people, is making a fake idol. Do we think Romeo's fake idol will be found by Lindsay?
I don't know if his fake idol is even going to be found. I don't know if they're just showing that as like a preview. I don't know what to think about that. I think it could just be a part of a preview that Romeo could just be making a fake idol to act like he has an idol. I don't think he's actually going to hide an idol. If
I
that
mean,
makes
look,
sense.
all I'm going to say is he better be careful because he's already at a point where he doesn't have a lot of respect. If he makes this fake idol, it doesn't work out, and then like it burns someone like a Mike or a Lindsay, and then they're like mad at him, that's going to make him look even worse. Because if you remember in David versus Goliath, like Angelina was already looking like a perfect person to take to the end. Then she makes a fake idol to get Allison out when it wasn't even really needed. And Mike's kind of like, you were just doing that to embarrass her. And Allison's even like, wait, so is that just a joke on me? And it made her look even worse. So I'm not saying that Romeo is going to benefit a lot from this, but I feel like he could be hurt a lot by this too.
Yeah. I don't have much thought on it, honestly.
I think someone this season from Christian is going to give up immunity to make fire. What do you guys think? So we did mention this in our recap on Wednesday. Dylan, do you have any thoughts?
I actually think the opposite. I don't see that happening in pretty much any scenario. It's like you have unless somebody is that first of all, I can't see Jonathan doing it. Like you would think you would think that Jonathan like is valuing the immunity challenge and is like, I want immunity to get here. No way Jonathan does it. Romeo, I don't see him winning the final immunity, but if he does, I can't really see him doing it either. Marianne, there would be no reason for her to do it. And Mike, I would say, is too old school to do it. Like I would think that Mike is not going to do it either. So at this point, to me, the only person who I think has a chance to do it is Lindsay. And even in that scenario, the scenario would have to be perfect. So in order for Lindsay I'm trying to think about this.
Yeah.
In order for Lindsay to take someone out in fire making, it would have to be like, I'm trying to think about this to me, I don't even think the scenario could be possible that she wants to do it, because technically, if you're looking at this final five, you would say like, oh, well, if sitting next to Jonathan, Romeo was like on the line here, that I don't even know. If she has an opportunity to sit next to Jonathan, Romeo, then like you would put yourself in that position. So like if she won immunity, and let's just say Mike somehow got eliminated at the final five, which again we don't think is possible because he is the idol. Like this is why I don't think the possibilities are there for her to do it. But like if she was able to sit next to Jonathan, Romeo, if she had beat Marianne in fire, for example, then like I could see her doing it. But I don't think that the scenario really sets up well. But I guess if I had to pick one person who would do it, I guess it would be Lindsay. But I don't really see anybody doing it, honestly.
I just don't think it's going to happen either, because I don't think we have a perceived final boss. Like there's no Rick Devens here where Chris wants to take him out. This is not like last season where if Ricard had made the final four and Xander goes, I got to take him out, and does that. So I don't, even though Marianne's now the biggest player on the board left, I don't see anybody giving up immunity to take her out. I just don't see that happening.
Yep.
A few more questions. Then we'll wrap it up. But let's see here. I only really see one more question, Dylan, unless there's another comment you want to bring up. Oh, sorry, two more questions. Fire TY. Could Romeo receive any jury votes? I don't think so. The only way it could happen is if he makes some type of late game big move and maybe one or two people get swayed. But I just don't see it happening at this point.
I think the only way it happens is if, like, for example, like, I don't know, the jury wants to give him second place because they like him better than somebody else that's sitting there, and they
okay, I see what you're saying. So like like in Blood versus Water, where Tyson could have maybe swept, but Vitas doesn't want to give Jervis second place, so he votes for Monaco.
Yeah, something like that. I don't think he's gonna get a vote though.
This is interesting though. Last question / comment comes from Adrienne. If Marianne wins, this might be one of the most visible edits for a winner, especially as a woman after what happened with Erica. And if Marianne wins, do you guys think this is the most visible winner's edit we got so far?
Here's what I think about this. Her edit's been very visible, but to me, it hasn't like screamed winner. Like we've seen, like she almost is getting like a woman fan favorite edit, but not like a woman winner edit. if that makes sense. So I'm going to say that, like, yes, she's gotten a strong edit. I don't know if I would like classify it as a winner's edit, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I think that's a great point. I think the edit has changed. And I think if 41 and 42 have taught us anything, it's to, again, check all assumptions at the door and try to not read the edit so much, because now they're really changing up how we look at the game. Where I agree, where Marianne, since episode 1, we've seen her a lot. We've seen a lot of Marianne in confessional. I think I would need to check the confessional counter, but she's done very well in that space. And only recently has her edit become a bit more game focused and really honed in on, her making the moves at the end of the game to win. I think this just comes down to, Dylan, we're no longer seeing, and Steven said this on the know-it-alls, but this is coming down to the winners not being shown as perfect players anymore. I don't think we're ever going to see, even Tony, when Tony won Winners at War, and Tony obviously did an amazing job, and we love Tony. I mean, there were times where Tony's name was brought up. There were times, I mean, even though he got no votes, his name was brought up. Sarah got very mad at him when he took out Sophie. So even though Tony played amazingly, he was not shown as like a perfect, like Kim Spradlin or Boston Rob, right? So I feel like, in my opinion, gone are the days of our winners looking, super pristine, no blemishes at all. Because the whole pre-merge, we got the edit of, okay, Marianne's a bit annoying. We may want to take her out. She's kind of on the outs here. And she's been very visible, but I think the edit has changed and we're seeing a different side of her now. So I think that's how you should look at it.
Yeah, I do agree with what you're saying. Yeah.
But I think that's it.
All right. So that will do it for our finale recap, finale preview podcast. But yeah, I'm really excited for Wednesday. We will go live, I guess, 15 minutes after that ends. So like 11:15 Eastern time on Wednesday. Excited for that and can't wait to see what happens.
I can't wait. Grab your torches and head back to camp.
Good night.